welcome to another episode of One for the Road with Jerry Cremin, your host, me, proprietor of Sullivan's Public House. And just before we get into it, I do want to just mention that Sullivan's was just recognized, named, given the accolade of being the best Irish pub in the world outside of Ireland. It's a huge honor, one that I more than share with my fellow colleagues. Without them, there would be no hospitality. It would just be me running around, sweating bullets, and looking all annoyed and pissed off. So I appreciate all my colleagues tremendously, the amazing guests that we've been able to attract here over the last 5 years. I've made some tremendous friends out of the establishment, and I couldn't be happier. So on behalf of Jamie and myself, thank you to everyone that made that possible. It is posted on our Facebook page and every other social media platform we engage on. It is conducted by Irish Central, and it's 5 million users. So we're amazingly honored. Stay tuned for the festivities. We'll have some parties. We have a halfway to St. Patrick's Day party coming up September 14th, I believe, is the Saturday. So we've got a lot of fun going on there, DJ, and a lot of tricks and shenanigans. So without further ado, very excited about this episode. I've called it High Performance, Staying Focused in Faith. We're sitting down with someone that, when I think of strength, focus, as I said, high performance, I think of a few people, but one really springs to mind, and his name is Sean Adkins. So without further ado, Sean, welcome, my friend.
Hey, it's good to see you, brother.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very kind. I mean, that was...
Before we kick it off, cheers.
From you. A good Schmiddix as always.
Oh, of course. I appreciate you going Irish there. I was going to get insulted if you ordered Miller Lite.
As if I was going to order anything different. It's always a Schmiddix, and usually a Middleton. So absolutely, brother.
I appreciate you coming on. You're the third guest now on our podcast.
I'm honored.
And it's we're getting a good string of really talented people, you know,
and then you chose me.
It's the third. Your third is a special number 3. So, you know, as I said, when I think of someone that's focused, disciplined, you just strike me as someone that wakes up in the morning, you know, does upside down sit-ups and just drinks a can of Red Bull, smashes it against his head, and runs out the door and tackles the world. So, since I met you, we met about 5 years ago now. So.
Yeah, we met right when you opened, and we actually met through a mutual friend.
Okay.
And it's been, I mean, you've seen it, and you've heard me talk about it. This is probably our favorite place in the world. I mean, this is...
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
No, and that's honestly one of the best organic thing to come out of Sullivan's was like the growth of friendships and connections, and you know, it really makes it, you know, they say do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
That's
and honestly,
right.
It's the people that come in here that have really, that saying is rang true to us. So luckily, we do look forward to coming to work. And
well, it's always one of those things too that, you know, if as a leader, if you can build the right team around you, you can be successful in just about anything. And we know the food industry is exceptionally tough to excel in. But you guys have done a phenomenal job, really against the odds if you think about it. I mean, you're in a tiny town of Oxford and #1 pub outside of Ireland.
Yeah, it's I think I say mind-boggling. It reminds me of that movie that he says mind-boggling. They're like mind-boggling. Yeah, you know when your thoughts get all cut up in your head like a bottle.
Yeah.
I think that was a Will Ferrell movie. But anyway, jump at that. As I say, this is going to be a pretty non-linear interview, so we're going to jump around a lot. But yeah, it's amazing. You know, it's. We've been named Best Irish Pub in Michigan now a few years in a row by Travel & Leisure, Delish, BuzzFeed, Irish Central, of course, and then to take that and to, you know, for me, I was like, oh, geez, we're best in Michigan. I was like, okay, well, we got to be ranked 50 in America then, you know what I mean? But then I guess we placed pretty high. We placed, I guess, within the top 10 or whatever, and then Irish Central put out a poll for, you know, who does everybody think, what their users think, and then we had runners up in like Thailand and Spain and all these crazy.
Really?
Yeah, it was just kind of it was surreal for sure. So try to sit down and review like your life, your resume. It's almost, when I send out these pre-interview questionnaires, it almost feels like I'm you know, almost stepping over boundaries trying to get into somebody's life.
No.
But reading yours was just Jesus, we're gonna have to do like a Godfather 1, 2, and 3 on this.
We'll
this
cut it
podcast.
down.
So I think I took what, at least for me, for our viewers and listeners, some content that they'll be able to really enjoy, and maybe there's some young adult that's out there that would take or listen to something we said and just like, that's cool, let me try that, and then that changes their lives. That's the overall, the grand vision of why we do this. So
Yep.
So you're we'll back it up. We're going to go to you were a military police staff sergeant for the United States Marine Corps.
That's correct.
So when military police, that's the guys with the MP written on helmets you see in movies, that are just, right? That's the stands for military police.
Right. It's not quite that, but yes.
So you, like certain detail patrol, you were undercover narcotics, personal security detail for like a 4-star general, which would be essentially, if you were to extrapolate that or to equate it to other industry or whatever, it'd be like watching the president, or
essentially.
And I put in here also too, right in parentheses, BADASS. That is pretty badass.
It's more boring than you think, that part of it. I've had people ask me that before. And matter of fact, we first moved here in 2008. Mm-hmm. And everybody had talked about the Rochester Christmas lights. Everybody had talked about it. And so one night we went out to dinner, Crystal and I, my wife, and as we were coming home...
It was amazing, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. She absolutely is. She is the absolute rock that has made everything I've done possible, mm-hmm. without exaggeration. And I'll give you the short version of this story, but we blew a red light. Okay. And I was pulled over by one of Rochester's finest. And we're talking, and of course I have a Marine Corps emblem on the back of my license plate. And so he walks up and he says, "Hey, you ran that red light." And I explained why. I acknowledge it was still wrong, but I had to make a decision based off of a car behind me. I didn't want to slam on the brakes right when it, mm-hmm. And so we were looking at the lights. So absolutely I ran it, absolutely get it, And he says, "So what'd you do?" I said, "Well, I was an MP." He goes, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Yeah, I was too, for the Air Force." I said, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And he goes, "Did you do anything else?" I said, "Yeah, I was PSD." And he knew exactly what I meant. Mm-hmm. He knew it was protection or personal or protection service detail. Mm-hmm. And so he goes, "What'd you think?" I said, "Dude, it's excruciating. It was so boring." He goes, "I know, right?" And so we immediately hit off, and he goes, "Listen, man," he goes, "just do me a favor. Don't don't do it again." Absolutely, I get it, But so it's helped. But you would be. I'll tell you a story later as we get into it here. Very rarely it was boring.
You can't leave the listeners and viewers hanging. You got to tell the story now.
Okay, so I'll tell as much of it as I can.
Okay.
Of the 4 years that I did PSD work, so I was part of a unit called U.S. Central Command. Okay. So the U.S. Central Command is actually headquartered down in Florida. There's a couple other sister units that I won't talk about that are related. And so I spent probably 75-80% of my time in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. As part of that, I was part of Protection Service Detail for General Zinni, who was Marine Corps 4-star general.
For General
Zinni?
How do you spell that?
Zinni. He actually did a book with Tom Clancy called Battle Ready. It's a phenomenal book. And it very much covers his professional career in the Marine Corps, right? From when the time he was a second lieutenant through the time he was a 4-star general at U.S. Central Command. So the majority of that time does get spent overseas, but the majority of the time everybody thinks, boy, that's got to be exciting. It's not really. Your job is to be as quiet and invisible as possible while still maintaining the protection status of the assignment, of the assignee. There was 2 incidents that occurred, and I won't go too far into it because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know if I should, but it's been a while now. Obviously, General Zinni retired
It's like keeping payroll receipts and stuff like that. 7 years.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You can finally get rid of them. So this was, General Zinni retired in 2000. I got out in 2001. So it's been a while. But there were 2 incidents that things got real hairy, real fast, and they were unexpected, of course. One of them being at a particular establishment that we were staying, and someone had somehow gotten through and got up an elevator. So we took care of the threat, everything was fine. But yeah, for the most part, you do what's called halls and walls, or you're with the boss. If you're halls and walls, you sit in a hotel room for 12 hours outside in the halls, just making sure that, you know, everything is kosher.
Do you mind if I use that phrase the next time somebody complains about a dish or anything like that? Server comes to me and I go into the kitchen, I can just say to the kitchen, "It's okay, guys, we took care of the threat."
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
It's been neutralized. But yeah, so it's now you're also your current role. You're the account executive for Dell Technologies.
Right. So I currently, I've been in this space, which is very strange because everybody thinks and assumes, and rightfully so, especially being in law enforcement while I was active duty Marine Corps, would be a very easy transition then to civilian law enforcement, or something along those lines, be it a contractor, especially because I was in and out of the Middle East. And I've got friends who've done that. I have plenty of them. I have one buddy who's still in North Carolina that was part of the SRT team, a SWAT team for the Sheriff's Department down where we lived. I've got a couple of guys that are contractors. We've got a couple of guys that are in federal law enforcement. So there is that path, and that's the easy one. To go into IT, everybody said, "What are you doing?" Or that's the question I typically get. It's usually, "Well, did you do IT in the Marine Corps?" Absolutely not. It had nothing to do with it. This was something that became, it was a choice based on what was probably the best foot forward or the best path for my family, right? And so that's kind of how I transitioned.
But it's also, I mean, from knowing you, I mean, you also have quite affinity or a passion for technology anyway. I mean,
yeah, I'm a geek. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why we kind of hit it off. Is I think we both do like tech, and you know, I enjoy the odd gaming here and there.
Yep,
you know,
for sure.
Whenever I could find time. But the last time I found time was 19, and I was playing Tiger Woods golf when it first came out. But and now you also you are our podcast host for Pastor and the Jarhead, which currently you're on a sabbatical from, but you will be resuming shortly.
Yeah, I think we'll probably change the format slightly. Kind of what the format was, it's one of my best friends who's actually the pastor of our church. It's First Missionary Church over on Clintonville Road in Clarkston.
Okay.
Really good guy. We're in a band together. Well, we play the worship music on Sunday mornings. We had a band previously, but we serve on the board together. He's the chairman, I'm the vice chairman, so we're very, very close. And so we kind of grew out this idea of saying, hey, how do we start reaching people? But this is a challenging thing for me to talk about simply from the standpoint of making sure that I'm very respectful to people in general, especially Christians, but also try to remain true to what I believe, what we're called to do as believers in Christ. I'm very much not a typical Christian. I'm very much not, I mean, look at me. So, you know, I have my very different thoughts. I've got a degree in theology, and so we thought it would be fun to actually put together this podcast that would kind of talk about, have some fun talking about the things that are just day to day, right? What did we watch on America's Got Talent last night? And kind of give some fun, because it's definitely, I think we're very humorous people, at least we like to tell ourselves that. And so the thought was to definitely try to reach out to people to hit some of these topics in Christianity, be it, you know, Bible translations, things that Christians tend to fight about, and even outside of that, even what the role is that we should play in this world. And I don't mean to make this into a religious podcast. It's simply to say, because we get a bad...
Those that are watching know me, they know that it's probably not.
but it's one of those things that I think we've gotten away from where we should be and how we work and treat people as Christians in general. And Matt hates when I say this, but if you take the entire Bible, and a lot of other people probably not like it either, but you can boil it down to 2 commandments. Love God, love people. That doesn't mean I come to you and say, hey, Jerry, you really should think about, you shouldn't be serving alcohol in this bar because, you know, that's, okay, obviously I have no problem. And we could probably do a whole nother podcast on Romans and Paul. But the point is to simply be able to show, I think what our goal was to be able to educate people, entertain, but also show them, listen, this is what Christianity really should be, if you think about it. If God loved humans, if you believe that God exists and that God is a creator and he created the world and humans and everything else, and then sent his son to die for us, what should we be doing for people? We certainly shouldn't be talking to somebody about what their lifestyle choice is.
Mm-hmm.
I've always held to the belief that the Holy Spirit will convict or will talk to somebody. It's not my job.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same token, we have a very, especially in this country, and if you think about it from a law enforcement's perspective, we have, and as a human principle, we see things differently. So, for example, stealing a pack of gum, right? Maybe a fine, maybe you go see the judge.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt it, right? It's larceny. Murdering somebody, potentially life sentence or even death if you're in a state that that has a death penalty. When we think about from God's perspective, all sin's equal. Okay, so if that's the case, and if I accept that that's true, then who am I to judge somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing. And even in James it talks about, who are you to judge? Did you create the heaven and the earth? Even in Job, he said, and Job starts complaining. God goes, really? My bad. I didn't realize you were here and made all this. So the point is how do we judge versus us? So that was really the point and the goal of the podcast.
Okay. No, it's not. I mean, maybe when you guys reconvene or kick it off, bring me on there.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely spice it up for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but it's good. Listen, at the end of the day, that's what these podcasts are about, is to connect with people and just to get people conversing and talking versus doing bad unto another,
Sure. And to answer your original question, because we really kind of squirrel, that's my fault. But so yeah, I'm an account exec for Dell Technologies. So I sell data storage to corporations.
Okay.
So it was definitely a vast switch. But yeah, it's interesting work. It can be very stressful at times, but it provides for our family. So
it's funny when I heard you worked for Dell. Dell's pretty close to. Not that I have a history with Dell, but in Ireland, where I'm from, Dell Technology, they have a plant in Limerick.
Okay.
The county I'm from. Have you been there?
I have not. So interestingly enough, and I know we've talked about this, I've been 26, 25 different countries, probably more now. There's been a couple others that I've had to take a trip to for work, but most of that was inside the Marine Corps. So most recently though, and actually I sent you a picture. I hit that.
You were in Germany,
we were in Stuttgart.
Yeah.
I was visiting. I was actually there for work, but I got very fortunate to visit my best friend in the world, a guy I was in the Marine Corps with. And we sat, and we ended up going to an Irish pub right next to the main square in Stuttgart, and it was an Irishman who was running it. And we talked. I said, "Hey, what are you doing all the way out here?" Because it was spot on perfect. It was great.
Well, that's the thing.
Was as good as this one.
Well, I mean, now best in the world outside of Ireland. I mean, it's good.
Right.
No, but that's the one thing about an Irish pub. It is a staple in every community. Any place that's got a population, I'd say over 3,000 or 4,000, has an Irish pub.
And you always feel welcome in at home.
Oh, for sure.
That's the thing.
So let me see. You were talking about 2.5 countries. I have to ask that because when I was reading your email, you said something about, and feel free not to answer this if it's going to get you in trouble. Paris Island. What happened on Paris Island?
Oh, I don't know if I should give this away. It's there's nothing I would get in trouble for talking about Paris Island. So Paris Island is a very interesting place. It's
honestly, I haven't even heard of Paris Island. So.
You haven't? Oh, so it's in South Carolina.
Okay.
It's basically near Hilton Head Island.
Okay.
It's not an island, but it gives you an idea of kind of the location.
Okay.
So it was the primary basic training base for the Marine Corps or post up until a certain point when they opened up San Diego.
Okay.
So there's a recruit depot at San Diego and then the original at Paris Island.
Okay.
So essentially what they did was they said, okay, we're going to split the country. There's an imaginary line or
I knew about San Diego.
division.
I didn't know.
Yeah. So Paris Island is a giant swampland, essentially. The most famous inhabitants of Paris Island are sand fleas.
Okay.
They're little no-see-ums that bite the ever-living snot out of you.
Okay.
And they are, and if you're in formation or you're at attention or you don't move. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, the drill instructors used to always like to say, "Good to go. You let those sandflies eat. You ate lunch, didn't you?"
Oh.
So the whole point was, the point of it is though is
sandfly. What?
It's called a sand flea.
Sand flea. Okay.
Yeah. So the point of it though is to be able to overcome little annoyances or little things that could potentially...
Stay focused.
Right, absolutely. Everything that the Marine Corps does, and I even went into it as a 19-year-old kid thinking, uh-oh, what did I do and why did I do this? Getting off the bus and on those little yellow footprints. But everything that you learn inside of boot camp really is about the removal of the selfishness, the removal of self and the thought of a greater team, right? It's also to build you up as far as instant obedience to orders. It's all these things to build. It is absolutely the building blocks. It rebuilt me, and I think it was a very good thing. As a kid, I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. I wasn't very self-assured. I had a lot of questions. Shoot, I was a kid that I played baseball my entire life, and I was a pretty good baseball player. Pretty good hitter, pretty good fielder, but I never tried out for my high school team because I had it in my head that I don't think I could succeed.
Why do you think that is? Just out of curiosity, I don't mean to turn this into a...
No, it's all right. I think I don't know that I could pinpoint one thing necessarily, but it was just in my own makeup.
As they say, your genetic software.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things that the Marine Corps did for me. I'm sure I provided them 8 years of service and et cetera, but the greatest thing was what the Marine Corps gave to me, and that was absolutely the ability to have self-confidence and to be able to think, you know what, this is challenging and I'm not sure if I can do it, but doggone it, we're going to go try to take that hill. And if we don't, all right, we'll try to take the next one, and that's okay.
So for any young women and men out there that are thinking about getting into the military, how do they shape your confidence? Like, what do they do? What is it? Just a constant grind of schedule and repetition and stuff that kind of builds you into that confident person versus a lack of confidence?
It's not really so much that. It's all of the challenges that you end up facing. So we have the Marine Corps martial arts program, and so you become part of that. And I was a kid. I'd never done any martial arts.
How old were you?
At the time I went in, I think I was 19.
Okay.
So I graduated high school, was trying to think about what am I going to do? Because I played baseball all my life. We'll just say that there were a lot of external circumstances that occurred about that time. And so I was trying to figure out as a young 18-year-old kid, what am I going to do? What's my direction? Everybody goes to college. Okay, great. That's check the box. Let's move on. And it came down to, because I looked at it and went, that's a challenge. And I had 2 people tell me, you'll never make it. Good to go. Let's do this.
That's in your makeup too, is that wanting to prove wrong.
Exactly. Wanted to prove myself. But once you get there, it's all about seeing the challenges. So there's a confidence course, right? It's a bunch of obstacles, and some of them are really high. It's about rappelling off the rappel tower. It doesn't matter if you're scared of heights. Suck it up, conquer it. The obstacle course, right? The daily stuff of the pressure of qualifying on a rifle range. At the time, I'd never shot any sort of weapon in my entire life.
Oh, wow.
Hadn't even held one. Hadn't even seen one in real life. So the ability to understand and know that I could make the changes and learn to become a very good marksman, that I could learn to overcome fear of heights, I could learn to overcome, that's invaluable. I mean, it gives you such a base of confidence that, listen, this used to scare the heck out of me. And now I just went up it and down it with no problem. All right. Yeah. What else can I do?
Move on to the next. Yeah. No, that's I see what you're saying. That's good. Yeah. It's for me. It was growing up too. It was. I guess it's also who you surround yourself with too. And
absolutely.
In the military, I guess you surround yourself by like-minded people that want to, change perceptions and prove people wrong that they can't do something. And I guess the people I hung out with, fortunately the friends I had, they were, I guess, like-minded, kind of like that.
Sure.
Let's scale this wall. Let's see if we can knock on a door, run, and get away with it. Yeah. So it's.
And don't get me wrong, I had very close friends in high school. There was a group of guys in high school, and it's unfortunate that it's primarily my fault. They all still live in Ohio. I'm originally from Ohio. We just lost half the viewers.
Buckeyes everywhere.
Yeah. We're like a cancer. We just pop up.
Actually, on a quick note, because I know we don't have much time left. I overheard recently that there was a war between Michigan and Ohio way back when, and that's where this whole rivalry started. No one died, but there was an actual
It started with Toledo.
war. Okay.
Yeah, my understanding is, and as a matter of fact, there's actually a really good
I
film.
just heard this the other day. That's why I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
I thought I was like, oh, what? Okay.
Yeah, there's actually a really good film out there by HBO Films called Michigan, or The Rivalry, Michigan versus Ohio State. And it talks about that. And it talks about that sliver of land, because at the Port of Toledo, and Michigan wanted it, and Ohio wanted it, and so it became an issue. So they had that part, and so the short version was essentially they gave Ohio Toledo, and Michigan got the UP.
Do we have a white flag? We're good here. Please watch the show. We don't have much time, but I do want to get into just real quick things. So your morning routine, just because you are a focused, you're a disciplined guy, is your morning routine, what do you do differently? Do you do anything differently? Are you still that strict regiments, like crack of dawn, coffee? Do you have, or are you more flexible?
It's changed a little bit, primarily because of children, right? And so being a dad is awesome. That being said, you know, my morning changed. So I usually wake up, I grab my phone first thing, I start checking emails at work, I start checking on things there, then I'll go through and I'll start reading the news. And then at some point, Crystal will bring me a Monster. At this point, mind you, I have not actually gotten out of the bed. So it's,
you get Monster in bed?
Yeah, so it's literally, but it's my energy drink, because I don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
So it's literally just going through emails and news stories and getting myself ready for the day. And then about the time she leaves, I get up, and because we split who takes what with what kid and so forth.
So when I do this episode, I'm going to start a hashtag called Getting Monster in Bed, and we'll see what happens.
It's a good deal, man, if you can get it. Absolutely.
So we're going to go just a couple quick fire round, because we only have like a couple minutes. But I do have something that I ask. First of all, do you have any quirks? Just quickly.
No, I got lots of quirks. Ask Crystal; she'll tell you a million of them.
Pick your top quirk.
Probably I'm noise sensitive. I am so very noise sensitive.
It's like loud eating people drive you crazy like that? Or?
Not so much that, but if I'm in the car, for sure, certain loud noises out and about. I mean, I was deployed to Bosnia. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. Didn't see a lot in the Middle East, saw a decent amount in Bosnia, but yeah, noise sensitivity.
Now, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Gosh, honestly, number one pet peeve is it really bothers me the way we are living in an outrage culture and the way people are treating each other. That's number one, 100%, because I really believe that what we should be doing is loving each other, and we can disagree, and that's okay. But we should be able to engage in the conversation, and we should be able to have enough empathy to talk to each other and understand that, okay, maybe this guy cut me off on M24 because, you know what, somebody just died, and he's half out of it, and he's upset. You know what, maybe we think about others before ourselves to a certain degree, and it's a challenge, but that's by far.
Now, if you had the ability to project something onto the moon, hypothetically speaking, where billions of people in the world could see this one little motto or message or something, simple line, what would it be? It could be funny, it could be, I don't know, what would you throw on there?
The whole point is love each other. I mean.
Perfect, that's perfect. So, I like it. That is the point, isn't it?
Absolutely, brother.
I've asked you this before, but you like whiskey, right? What's your favorite whiskey?
Absolutely. Favorite, that's a tough one. I mean, if we're talking about, and there's going to be people who disagree, especially with everything that's going on right now, my favorite Irish whiskey now is probably Proper 12.
Connor's?
Absolutely.
Connor, if you're watching this at all, send a bottle to my friend William. He's done a lot for our country.
I scoured when
That's yours, but
when it first came out and he released it. Remember, I scoured the Detroit metro area, and I bought one for me and one for you.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't remember that night too well, actually.
So yeah, but I mean, outside of that, you know, as far as bourbon, Scotch is probably the favorite, is a Balvenie Caribbean cask, and then as far as, you know, bourbon, take your pick. There's so many good bourbons out there today.
On that note, will you join me? I think we'll have to do an episode 2 because there's a lot more to cover. But
absolutely, brother.
Now,
anytime. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for all the viewers, listeners. We hope we entertained a little bit, but if not, we'll give it another shot. Cheers.
Cheers.